Right, okay. So the plan really this evening, I think, is just to try and work out what we've done so far, because it's been a bit of a while since we've actually sort of had a lesson. I don't plan on introducing any new grammar this evening. What I want to do is to have a look at what we've done so far, but look at some more prepositions with you, and we'll look at something new in terms of how Greek presents itself. But in terms of a structure to a sentence or a clause or whatever, there wouldn't be anything new. Okay. So we'll go through firstly a little bit of an English grammar check. We'll just go through the basics of that so we remember what we're looking at, some of the words and names that we use, just so we know. And then we'll have I haven't written it up in the outcomes there, but we'll have a look at a Greek summary so far, just so that we can kind of quickly sort of scan what we've done before then picking up some new prepositions, which you'll see is some prepositions with 2 cases and then some prepositions with 3 cases. And we'll explain what that all is when we get to it. So that's what we want to try and do today. So just to firstly have a look at our English grammar check, we really need to know what we're doing with our English first before we can kind of really understand how the Greek puts their own grammar and how it all works together with that. So we have so far introduced nouns, verbs, pronouns, and some prepositions. Okay, and so nouns are the naming words that we use, and then we looked at some verbs, which are the action, which tell us what the subject is doing, and then we did look at some pronouns, but we only looked at a few. We looked at the 3rd person pronoun, so the he and the him and the his and the her, those kind of words. So we looked at a little bit of some pronouns, and which was a good way of being able to reduce the repetition of a noun in a sentence. And we looked at that. And then we had a look at prepositions, which were a word, usually a little word actually, that just it's a word that governs another noun or pronoun, and it expresses a relationship from one word to another in the clause. So that sounds a complicated way of saying something, but the examples I put just today will touch on some of the prepositions that we're going to look at later on. Okay, so examples: David teaches through his computer because of the distance everyone lives. If we just identify a few things here, so David is the noun in this. There's a noun. Computer is a noun. Okay, that we've got in this particular sentence, and the distance really is acting and functioning as a noun as well, isn't it? So I mean, the sentence is a little bit more complex than what we've been looking at, so I won't worry too much about any more than that. But the verb that we're looking at here is what I'm doing, which is teaching, and we don't have the object, if you like, of what I'm teaching, because then we have this preposition which kind of comes up here. This is telling us something about how the teaching is happening. It's happening through the computer. All right, so the preposition in this case is through the computer, and although the expression because of is, it's quite an interesting word that's used in lots of different ways, particularly when it's Greek. It's actually giving you some relationship of the distance in the sentence to whatever else we're doing. So we'll find that that's used in Greek as a preposition. And then the pronoun, just so we know, with a his and so on, it's my computer. So rather than putting David teaches through David's computer, we would replace it with the his. Okay, so we've just got different ways of describing different parts of a sentence, and we need to know that in order to understand how our Greek sentences are structured. And again, you can see further examples just down there, similar ideas. The teaching is the verb, and then there are things that are going on that tells us more about what is being taught, who's teaching it, and how it's being taught. So we're really just trying to build up a picture of what a sentence looks like through breaking it down into little sections. So if we leave the sort of English grammar there and look just at what we've looked at in Greek so far. Now, depending on how much vocabulary you've learned and whether you're kind of familiar with all the words on the screen there. They're all words that are from the first few chapters. So we have touched on all of them before. What I'd like to do is to just refer to a couple of things as we go through this in terms of just picking up some of the Greek that we've learned. And we'll translate as we go. So the first thing, if we would just notice a couple of things, that we have a noun here, and another noun here, and another noun here. I'm just going to indicate the nouns to you, and then we have another noun here and another noun here. Now you may be familiar with, oh, and I've missed one, and this one here. So we have these nouns in our sentence. And one of the things which we were noting about our nouns in Greek is that they come in three forms. We have a masculine, a feminine, and a neuter noun. And depending on whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter, will determine the endings that the noun has. Okay, it's one part of the ending. So these nouns here have a certain type of ending because they're all masculine nouns. So these ones are masculine, and you just have to learn whether they're masculine, feminine, or neuter. That is how nouns work. They stay with their gender. This one here, it has a different kind of ending because of the eater, and that's a feminine noun. Now this one here looks like it could be masculine. Actually, it turns out it's a neuter noun. And this one's a masculine noun. Okay, and you can see that we've got all these different endings, and those different endings are not just based on its gender, but they're also based on its case, as well as its number. Okay, so you've got its gender, then you've got we'll call it number, put next. So that's just whether it's plural or singular. So these ones are singular, right? So masculine and singular. Masculine, singular. This one's a singular noun. These are all singular ones, and then the final one at the end happens to be a plural noun. So we talk about the number, and we've got singular and we have plural. And then thirdly, there is a case. Okay, and the case is also determines the ending that you end up with, and the case tells us in one sense where its position is in the sentence, so whether it's the subject of the sentence or the object of the sentence, but it also gives us some indication of whether we looked at indirect objects, and we looked at objects that were in possession, and then we started to look at prepositions, and we noticed that certain prepositions, those little words, have a case that follows them. So there's a different number of cases. So there's the nominative case, the accusative case, there's the genitive case, there's the dative case, and then there's one which is quite rare, which is the vocative case. So every noun has a kind of different ending. All right. So we looked at all of that, and the endings that we find, just for completeness here. So this was a nominative ending. This one was a genitive ending, which you may well spot is quite often a key there with the omicron upsilon at the end. This one is an accusative ending. And because it's a feminine noun, it has a different kind of ending, but that's the accusative for feminine nouns. And this is a dative, and this is a genitive. Now, you may not know all of those. You might need a bit of time just to go back and kind of check on that. But we break down nouns according to those things, and that's really helpful for understanding its position in a sentence, so we can understand how to translate it properly and understand its connection. Now, alongside that is the article, the definite article, the word that means the in our language. They don't have a word that means a. So when we talk about this word here, which means sun, by the way, the first word, we can have the sun, and a sun refers to a specific sun or a generalized sun. Okay, the definite article is a definite individual. We're talking about the sun. Okay, so could have a different color highlighter because we didn't talk about those. I'll just do them in orange. So these articles here, so all of these words which I'm highlighting orange are all words that mean the. And the reason why they're all different, we realized that in Greek, in order to connect the article with the noun, it actually has to agree in gender, number, and case. So, unsurprisingly, we find that this is the masculine singular nominative of the article, and it links with these two go together, which means the sun, which I might write in a different color actually. This is going to get a bit messy, right? So the sun, okay. And we will find, and I'm not going to write them all above each other, but this two here, to Theo, is going to agree with the word generally speaking that follows it, but not always. Generally speaking, there we see, and you can see it's got a similar ending, and we note that that's the ending for a genitive singular. It's always masculine genitive singular. It's always that particular spelling. So the word here is God, Theo, or Theos, which would be its nominative form. Because it's in the genitive, that would be written as of God. Okay, so the Son of God. And we talked about the fact that when we refer to God, particularly God in heaven, in the New Testament, you'll find that it has the article. So we don't write the Son of the God. We write the Son of God. It means the Son of God. Just the article, which is not translated, but it's kind of there to sort of help us to understand who he is referring to. And in Greek, often nouns that wouldn't normally have the in front of them are written with an article, and we just don't translate it when we do a good English translation. So similar things happen with the other ones. I won't go into any more detail on those, other than that just to say that they agree with the noun that they follow. So the ending in lots of cases is the same. I will translate them as we go. So this means this is Petron, which is Peter from Petros. It's the accusative, which is one of the objects of our sentence. And again, we wouldn't write the Peter, but quite often proper nouns, so names of people, and will have an article in front of them. We just don't translate it. So so the Son of God is that bit, and that one just represents Peter. This feminine word here, you may recall if you've kind of looking at it and thinking, yeah, I know what that is. This is we can write there, and it means sister. All right, so we have a word for brother and we have a word for sister. So we have a delphos, which is in the masculine form, and we have a delphe, which is in the feminine form, and that's brother and sister. Okay, so we have the sister. So hieroi here, which is in the dative. This is the reason why this one's in the dative is because it follows this little word here, n, which we'll come on to in just a moment. So this is the, and it's temple, and it's a neuter noun. So it comes from a hieron, and the dative singular for neuter nouns are the same as the dative singular for masculine nouns. So there are some overlap in some cases. And then finally, just on finishing off our nouns, we've got a genitive plural here. This is from oklos, which is crowd. And if we're in the plural, we want crowds. And we would say, so this is, because it's in the genitive, we're going to put the crowds, and there's a reason why it's in the genitive, because it follows preposition. Right, so there are nouns. Okay, then we'll just pick up the verb. So I have a verb here. So we worked out that verbs will be in a singular or in a plural, and they refer to first person, I and we, second person, you singular, you plural, or third person, which is he, she, or it, and they. Okay, so in terms of verbs, we've got, let's put that up in nouns, and then these are verbs. So we have the number, which is we're going to be in first, second, third, sorry, singular or plural. If we just do it, so I do it like that. So in this case, they all have a different ending. It's all about the endings, really. And although when we get to complicated verbs, we'll find some things at the front of the words. But for now, just the ending here tells us that this particular verb is in the first person singular, which should agree with the subject, which is the sun, right? The sun is in the singular. And so therefore, the verb needs to, if it's going to be what the sun is doing, then it needs to be in the third person singular in order to be able to represent that. So the third person singular, and it means to teach. Okay, so we would write teaches. It's a present verb, so we can put is teaching or teaches. Okay, this idea of that's what's happening at the moment. So the Son of God teaches Peter. We have a little word here, conjunction, a very familiar word to in the New Testament. It means and we just it will appear lots of times. So we've got the Son of God teaches Peter and the sister, and then we've got this other word here. Now this is a pronoun. I can't remember if they were blue in the previous slide, but let's say they were. So the pronoun here, so autu, this is also got its own endings, and in terms of the endings here, they will match very much the endings of the masculine, feminine, and neuter nouns, so we can work out which one it's referring to. In this case, literal translation of his or his. Okay, so the sister of him, or what we would normally write is his, and we would translate in good English, teaches Peter and his sister. Okay, that would make more sense to write it like that. Okay, so that's the pronoun, and we'll leave that there. And then finally, the little prepositions. There's two prepositions. There's en and apo. And when we looked at the prepositions, the word en means in, and the word apo means away from, if it is or just from. What we were saying last time with prepositions was that the en or each preposition follows with the nouns in a certain case. So en always has the noun after it, which it's governing in the dative case. Right, it's always the dative. So you'll notice that this here is in the dative because that's the bit that's related to this preposition. Whenever you see en, then the noun that it's governing is going to be in the dative case always, so you know what it's linked to. For the word apo, which means away from, we looked at that particular preposition and we noted that that always follows with a genitive. So here, unsurprisingly, we should find that the word crowds is going to be in the genitive. So we know that it's linked to the word apo. So there are a group of 5 prepositions that we had learned or were looking at last time, which have one case that follow it, always the same case. So en, which is the first one, which we've just looked at there, is en plus the dative. So you could often find them written down like this. Then we have some ones with the genitive. So we have apo, which is plus the genitive, and ek, which also follows with a genitive. And then you've got 2 that follow with the accusative, i.e. the noun is then written in the accusative, which is pros and ice. And those are quite standard, common prepositions, and their basic definition is in, away from, out of, and then towards, and then into. Okay, so those those are prepositions we looked at, and they'll possibly appear in some of the questions you do. Right, I've taken a little bit of time just to recap, and I hope you found that helpful, just to remind you of some of the things that you've done so far. They really are the building blocks of understanding Greek. And once we've got these bits, and we can start to build in some more variances and so on. So I don't know if there are any questions anybody wants to raise on that at the moment, if we're okay. If you are, then I'll carry on and just introduce a new bit to you. I'm just thinking I'm going to stop this. Oh no, I don't want to just carry on. So, right, prepositions with two cases. So prepositions with two cases. We now are going to look at a series of prepositions that may have a different case after it. In the noun that follows might be in the accusative or the genitive, or it might be in the dative, or so on. All right, so we need to look at this little variance, and the reason why you have a different case after a particular preposition is because it means something different. And so we're going to have to learn a little bit more than we do for the one case prepositions, where n always follows with the dative, therefore it's always in. Okay, it's not quite as simple when it comes to these prepositions. We're going to look at two prepositions with two cases, and there are 5 of them. Okay, so we have I'll highlight them for you. So we have dire, okay, dire, and you've met many of these words you've met in English in their some form. The classic one for this one is diameter. So you might think about what dia might mean, but it doesn't always mean one single thing. Then you've got kata, meta, peri. I said there were 5. I can't count, can I? There's 6 of them. Hupo and hooper. Okay. So they are these prepositions. Now, if we look at this first one here, then what we find is that dire can actually follow a noun in the accusative. So kind of dire plus the accusative, or you might find that this particular preposition follows with a noun in the genitive, which is to logu. So they mean 2 different things. Okay. We're just going to have to learn them, and it will take a little while before you kind of become familiar with which one's which. Okay, but you do have to check the case of the noun in order to translate the particular preposition in this case. So firstly, if it's in the accusative, it means because of. And if it's in the genitive, then it means through, as in if the noun's in the genitive. So this first word means because of the word, whereas when it's in the genitive, it means through the word. Now, there may be some similarities in their understanding, but they have also obviously subtle differences. Okay, and in some of them, they're quite very different in terms of their interpretation. So we're just going to need to pick up these particular prepositions, and we're going to need to know what their
It's just closed down. He's just trying to sort it out.